Hey, Arena family. This is Coach Stahl. I'm the head wrestling coach at Northwestern College up here in Orange City, Iowa, and been asked to kind of speak to you a little bit about kind of how we do leadership at Northwestern within the wrestling program. And so I'm going to just share some insights with you as I think about how do we lead or develop leaders within our team, and that is kind of it's been an evolution as we have as I'm finishing up my 12th year here at the college. And when I was first year coach 12 years back, I was blessed to have a great group of veteran wrestlers, and leading or looking for leadership within the team was pretty easy. We had a lot of great guys and older guys, and so I didn't have to do much. But probably after my fourth season at Northwestern, um, was really, if I'm being honest with myself, was real passive about how I was preparing leaders. I just kind of let them rise to the top like cream, I guess. And what happened after my fourth year is we had guys graduate, and we had no leaders to step in, and in a team without leaders, guys who buy into the vision and lead is a team in without direction. And a team without direction is, you could have all the talent in the world, but you have it's just a lot of despair and a lot of hardship, and that's what we experienced my fifth year. It was really tough. It was kind of depressing, and I was frustrated with the guys. The guys were frustrated with me, and I knew things needed to change. So after about my fifth year, I became real intentional about pouring into my leaders, and one of the things I really tried to do as we develop leaders on our team, and it's one of our pillars when I think about what we're about. We use the sport of wrestling to try to create young men and develop young men who reject passivity, accept responsibility, who expect a greater reward, and who lead courageously. So leading courageously is something that is important to us. And I know that when guys come to us, um, we want to develop leaders. That by the time they leave, we want them to be young men who can lead their teams, lead their families, lead in the job place. So that's important. And I wasn't intentional about that. But one of the things that really was impressed upon me 5 years ago was how Jesus led. Okay, we're a Christian college, so that's important to us. But um, what I would tell you is Jesus. He had 12 disciples, and even within the 12 disciples, he had three dudes that he just poured into all the time. And so I kind of looked at that model, and that's kind of what we do now. Um, so our program is designed to develop leaders, but ultimately I pour into those leaders and teach them how to lead. Okay, so using Christ as an example, um, we looked at how do we, number one, what kind of a team do we want to be, and so we're real intentional again. A lot of this is being real intentional. We were real intentional about defining who we want to be. What kind of men? Uh, what does a Red Raider look like? What does a warrior look like? What does a Titan look like? Whatever, wherever you're at, a Crusader, a Mustang. What does that look like? What kind of attributes do they have? How do they study? How do they train? How do they compete? How do they live? How do they spend their extra time? We came up with some skills or some things that we felt like um, good Raiders. This is how they live. And if you are into rugby, do a lot of reading. But if you're into rugby, there was a team called the All Blacks. It's out of New Zealand, and they have a saying that better people make better blacks. All right, so we kind of stole that. Better people make better Raiders. So we just really are intentional about being good people. All right, and so what we do to identify who those leaders are is at the end of our season, we talk about, we get the guys together and just ask them uh, what should a person look like or act like to be a leader for our team, right? And so we list a bunch of attributes. We list things like they should be on time, they should compete hard, they should win with dignity, and they should lose with dignity, right? So we identify all these things, and then we ask them, who amongst you best exemplifies these things? And um, and in that way, it's not a popularity contest, but so the team selects their captains, their leaders, based on those things that they feel like leaders do. So, in probably 90 to 95% of the time, the team picks who I think best represents those things. So, that has been something we've been doing here for about 7 years, and it's been real effective. Now, once those captains are chosen, um, you know, we I begin to pour into them, and by pouring into them, I invest time into them. We have weekly meetings. We do some book studies, so we read a chapter, come back, we talk about it. We've used like Michael Fessler's Wrestling and Faith. Um, we've used uh, Steve Farrar's How to Ruin Your Life by 30, and other types of books like that. But we usually do some type of a book study, uh, but ultimately I try to get our leaders, uh, teach them how to mentor their teammates, because you guys that are leaders, you guys that are expected to lead your team, we tend to think that that is an innate skill that people are drawn to you. You naturally know how to lead your peers. What I found is that that's not true. And as coaches, we need to be real intentional about teaching kids how to lead their peers, because otherwise it becomes them calling everyone out, um, and it becomes very confrontational. And so we spend a lot of time talking about investing into people's lives. And one of the fun things we do, and we kind of have fun with this. We draft teams like a fantasy draft. We draft teams, and each captain picks players. We do that in private, and so teams are created, and as those teams are created, captains get to pick their team name, and we have five captains, so we split our roster up into five different teams, and these teams compete for points based on competition, based on how they do in school, based on um, are they doing acts of service? Are they doing community service? Are they helping out their teammates? You know, we get a kid who invites someone out. We get a kid from Hull over here that invites someone over to their house for Sunday dinner. Then yeah, they get points for that. If they do a team project with us, or if we do Special Olympics and they're involved with that, they get points for that. If they, we have a chapel requirement. If they're ahead in their chapel, they get points for that. If they are ditching class, then they get points taken away for that. So it's a way to use a reward system to create a friendly competition where these teams can encourage one another. But within that, so each captain has like five or six guys underneath them. All right. And we talk about, how do I invest in their life, right? And they can do things like, well, I'm going to send a text out to everyone, but that's such a um, passive way to invest in people. So I really encourage the captains to make a personal touch every week. That they go out and they face to face, how you doing? And, if a kid is struggling, just to sit down with them, and maybe not even to fix it, but just to listen. Because a lot of times, what we find is that young men have a real hard time being vulnerable. They have a real hard time opening up to their peers, and so I try to teach the captains how to listen. Try to teach the captains how to be available. What's the right way to give help? Um, you know, kids not. He's behind in chapel credits, or he's missing class. A captain can go and say, "Hey, quit dinking around," or "Quit being an idiot." But sometimes guys don't respond that well. So teaching leaders how to call out a teammate in a way that is appropriate, in a way that's effective. Because sometimes leaders have a way to where they could actually tear a team apart if they do it poorly, right? And the other side of that is that these captains or these leaders, they're the standard bearers, and I really try to encourage them. Like, we just picked our 5 captains, and we have a challenge where we send out a video every week. Last week we sent out the Thomas Gilman and Ethan Lezak match, and we really wanted the team to see how Lezak or how Gilman responded to being down 8-0 and how he battled back, right? Those intangibles, those things that we can't teach in the wrestling room, but we teach by getting them to watch video. And guys love watching epic matches, right? We hope. So we do a challenge where we send that match out, and guys, they watch that, and then they send some notes back to a coach, right? And so we have our captains send the video out. And one of the things I challenge them, listen, captains, you guys can send that out and then put it off until Friday. It's due on Saturday. Or as soon as it's sent out, you can do the challenge right away. You be the first to do the challenge. Quit letting the guys that are underneath you, quit letting them beat you to the punch. All right. So we really challenge our captains. When you get that challenge, do it. You do it, and then you can encourage your teammates, and then you can say, "Hey, pay attention to this," or "Hey, I did that. It took 10 minutes. It's not a big deal. It's actually really good. It's a lot of fun. Watch this part of the match. What'd you think of that?" And they can start having those types of conversations. But if you're going to be a leader who is just telling people what to do and you're not doing it, that's not leading. All right, that's being a dictator. And people don't like dictators. So really encourage them. If you're the standard bearer, if you want to lead your team, you better be living the standard. All right, because if you're just telling them do this and you're not doing it, then that's hypocrisy. And hypocrites are not good for teams. So really encourage the guys, be the standard, understand that you were picked to lead the team because of the way you were living before. Now that you have that responsibility, that's a blessing. That pressure is a blessing. It's not a burden. And so a lot of times how we choose to frame that is important. All right. So really encourage them to be the example. And then just be good people, be good men. God has given them the gifts and abilities to lead their peers. Use your gifts wisely. So that's kind of a little bit of a insight into how we lead. You have to know your vision. All right. And hopefully I kind of described what our vision is. Wrestling is a tool for us to develop young men, and one of the qualities of a good man is that he's able to lead courageously, and that means sometimes you got to stand up. You got to stand up for something you believe in, and sometimes you have to stand alone. So you got to know your vision. So know what your team's vision is. Coaches, know what your vision is. Does your team know what your vision is in regards to leadership? Okay, and then be intentional. You can't just tell a kid he's a captain, and then or be told you're a captain, and then all of a sudden you have this epiphany of what leadership is. It doesn't work like that. We're not like that. So if you're a coach hearing this, be intentional. All right, think about, how can I invest in the lives of these guys? How can I spend time with them and share with them what I think it is to lead? Okay, because leadership is it's not just a title, right? It's an opportunity for you to walk alongside, sometimes to walk in front, and sometimes to walk behind and kick them in the butt. But be intentional with how you're teaching them how to lead. Okay, how do they call out a peer? How should they train? How should they be training? How should they compete in the lift? In your program, are leaders the first one in the room? Do they mop? Do they mop the mats? And for some kids, that was hard for me. Mop the mats. I don't mop the mats. I'm the captain, right? But getting our guys to learn, for us, to lead sometimes means to serve, to be a servant leader. And, our guys mop mats. Our guys take care of the laundry. Our captains do. They serve their peers. And that, I think, opens up a lot of opportunity for guys. All right. So be intentional with how you're teaching kids how to lead. And if you are a captain, man, be intentional about reaching out to your teammates. Uh, invest in them, ask them questions, take an interest in them, even the weird ones. All right. And if you don't have weird guys in your team, you're probably the weird one. All right. So every team, this is wrestling. We got some strange fellows in our programs, and that's awesome. I love that. I love to see how that all comes together. Okay, but get to know them, appreciate them, give them some value by showing them an interest if you're a captain. All right, and then finally, understand whether you're a coach or a captain. When you lead your team, your actions have ripples, and what I mean by that is that when you say something, it has an effect on the people around you. When you do something, it impacts people around you. And when you begin to understand that, whether it's in the wrestling room or in the classroom or at the grocery store or in Walmart or wherever you're at, all right, how you act is going to reflect on something or someone. So be mindful of that, all right? Good people or better people make better raiders, right? Better people make better, whatever, fill in the blank. But that's kind of an insight on how we develop leadership on our team. And I think next week I'm talking to you about. I'm going to share some thoughts with just living life and in leading outside of the wrestling room. So we'll kind of dive into that a little bit more. But if you are a leader on a wrestling team, man, what an incredible privilege and blessing you have to make a legacy. And we'll talk more next week about living a life of significance. But and if you are a coach developing leaders, man, also what a blessing that is. It's one of my greatest joys is investing in the young men so that they can understand what it means to lead. So, hey, if you see this, embrace the challenge to lead. Go out there and just make some contact with people and try to encourage them to be the best versions of themselves. All right. Until next week, and be a blessing. All right. Bye.